Parthiban Kanavu, English translation by Anand Kannan, narrated by Sujatha Anand. Book 3, Chapter 23. The Waterfall Trail. The golden early morning sunshine highlighted the beauty of Kolli Hills. On one side, the rocks were awash with sunshine, while the elongated shadow presented a strange contrast on the other. The scene was cheerful, annotated by the chirping of birds and the pleasant sound of the river as it splashed around the rocks. Two majestic white horses were walking along the hills. The two riders were familiar to us, Ponnan and the sage. They were chatting as they rode on the trail, hugging the wild river. The sage pointed to a barren rock and asked, "Ponna, what does the rock remind you of?" Ponnan replied, "Nothing. It's just a barren rock. It does not look like anything." "Do you know what it reminds me of?" "It reminds me of Lord Nandi, the guardian in a bull's form, who guards Lord Shiva's abode. The bull has its front legs folded. Now see the shadow of that rock." Ponnan was startled when he looked. "Your Holiness, you are right. It looks like Nandi." This is the difference between a common man's vision and a sculptor's. When a sculptor looks at a rock, he sees an elephant, lion, or a deity. He can easily visualize the steps he needs to go through to get the form that he has in mind. "Your Holiness, are you by any chance—" "Yes, I am a sculptor. Among all jobs in the world, that would be the most fulfilling job for me. If only I can finish the job at hand. Leave that aside. Have you seen Mamallapuram?" "Yes, Your Holiness. Just once." "What did you think?" "I thought I had slipped into a fantasy world." But those sculptors are not fantasy. They are more real than we are. They are going to outlive us by a considerable length. People are going to admire them 1,000 years from now. Ponna, once I dreamt of transforming the whole country using Mamallapuram as the model." "Your Holiness, you had a dream as well?" "Yes, dreaming is not the sole prerogative of your King Parthiban. He dreamt of the glory of Chola land. I dreamt of the glory of the entire Tamil land. Ponna, this holy land of Bharat is divided into south and north. In stories and epics, the north has a prominent presence. The northern kings are better known in history. There is no one in the south comparable to Chandragupta of Pataliputra, Emperor Ashoka, or Vikramaditya. Even in the recent past, Emperor Harshavardhana was far better known than Emperor Mahendravarman. Do you know why that is? The south has been divided for centuries into small kingdoms. Emperor Harshavardhana's empire was 800 kilometers in length and breadth. Here, you encounter 3 kingdoms within 200 kilometers. Emperor Mahendravarman wished to change this. He wished that the entire Tamil region be brought under a single rule. He wanted the Tamil Empire to be known through the civilized world. My dreams were in the same vein. I wanted it all to happen in my lifetime. I was building castles in the air, but they collapsed on the face of the pure bravery of one man." "Your Holiness, who are you talking about?" asked Ponnan. "I am talking about your King Parthiban, of course. I can still visualize the battlefield of Vennar. It was some battle. On that night of the full moon, the river Vennar seemed to run with blood. It was a horrific battle. Some 10,000 warriors were left Uriyur that day, but no one stayed alive to carry the report of the war back," said the sage with emotion. "Alas, I was not fortunate to fight as one of those 10,000, said Ponnan. "Ponna, you need courage to fight a war and die. You need greater courage to stay alive and keep your conviction. You are courageous on that count. Vali is even more courageous. You are both blessed that way." "Your Holiness, can you tell me one more time of the battle on the banks of Vennar?" asked Ponnan. He never tired of hearing of the battle and the boon Parthiban asked of the sage. The sage had not tired of telling that story, so he obliged. "In a while. They reached the spot where the waterfall fed into the wild river. The terrain was not suitable for riding, so they left the horses in the wooded area. "Shouldn't we tie the horses up?" asked Kannan. "Horses of such breed are smarter than most men. When your prince was swept by the river, the horse Pushpak came to me and gave me an implicit message, didn't it? If we leave the horses here, they will stay put. If we tie them up, we'd be endangering them. If they sense wild animals, they can't escape." The sage patted the horses. The two men started the climb, tracking the waterfall. The rocks were of varying sizes and shapes. The sage walked on them and jumped between them easily. He was also able to wade through the water. Kannan had trouble keeping up with him. "Odd," Kannan asked. "Is there anything that you can't do, Your Holiness?" "Just one. I can't break a promise I made," said the sage. Before Kannan could fully interpret what he said, he added, "See how the promise I made to your King Parthiban has ruined my dreams?" "How can your dream be ruined by King Parthiban, Your Holiness?" "When I returned from Vatapi, I was determined to unify the whole southern country into a single empire. The Tamil nation is not big enough to have more than one ruler. I was going to root out the Chera, Chola, and Pandya dynasties and make the Pallavas the lone rulers. Parthiban's bravery won me over. I pledged to make his son an independent, brave warrior. Hence, I have had to make efforts to make Chola country independent. Now I regret looking for Parthiban's body in that battlefield. I must have been driven by what they call destiny." They climbed on. Around noon, they reached the part of the mountain where the waterfall fell noisily over a vertical rock face. Kannan indicated that this was the dead end that he had mentioned. The sage looked around thoughtfully. He got into the water body at the foot of the waterfall. He walked on the ridge towards the waterfall by holding onto the rough edges of the rock. He walked and swam in the water to get closer to the waterfalls. Kannan was watching this with a sense of wonder. As he was watching, the sage disappeared behind the curtain of water. Kannan was rattled enough for a cry to escape his throat. As he waited, he began to wonder if the sage would return. As time ticked by, his despair grew. His imagination boggled as he started thinking of all that could go wrong if something had happened to the sage. "I can't return without him," he thought. "It is better to meet the same fate by following him than to return empty-handed." He followed the sage's path and stepped into the deep body of water. End of chapter 23.